Rishi Sunak came into office with a big hail that this would be a new way, this would be a new Conservative government, that things were going to get back to at least some sort of normality. And of course, as part of this, he launched his 5 pledges that he said would be the focus of his administration. His government would focus on these things like a laser and try and solve all these issues. Well, how has he done? Well, honestly, if you look at those 5 pledges, none of them have really succeeded. And even the inflation one did not really succeed because, well, Sunak did nothing to try and solve inflation. He just crossed his fingers and, of course, hoped it would go away. But of all those pledges, the one everyone really knows and often points to is, of course, the pledge to stop the boats. This very, very, very small way that, you know, people would use to sort of cross the channel and arrive here is minuscule. There's more people overstaying their visas, arriving by plane, than there are on these small boats. And yet, this is the big worry. This is the thing that we're all worrying about. You know, it's, as we've said before, how do you solve this? We've done it before. Create safe routes, fund the asylum system properly. Job done. That's what Rishi Sunak should have done. But of course, as we've said, this isn't hard right enough for many of these ideologues. And we've gone from right through from David Cameron up until now with different Conservative Home Office ministers, ministers for immigration, just doubling down and doubling down more and more on hard right policies because, oh my word, immigration is like the biggest problem that the UK has, so we've got to solve it. But as I said before, it's really not. Immigration is really not an issue. We have all the stuff there in place, ready to sort of solve these issues that immigration brings up. But immigration itself, not an issue. People want to come here. They want to live here. They want to become British citizens. Excellent. More power to them if they want to do that. Like I say, they become very much contributing members to society. But instead, oh no, immigrants. Again, get over it, guys. It's not the end of the world. We need immigrants, and we need a lot of immigrants because, well, we have a very, very lowering all the time population. This is going to cause huge problems to us in the future. You want an example? Go look what's happening to Japan, and they're increasing still incredible reluctance to allow immigration, even though they have an ever decreasing population, which is creating ghost towns. It's creating massive job shortages. And yet, one of their answers to help solve that is immigration, but Japan won't do it. So, but that's probably another story for another time. However, we did hear very recently, or at least yesterday, we heard that big announcement that they have solved the backlog, that this entire backlog that was causing all this problems within the asylum system has now been solved. It's done with, guys. It's over. We don't have to worry about this anymore. Just focus on something else because we've done it. We've solved it. Technically, that's one of the 5 pledges, you know, ticked off. And it wouldn't surprise me, by the way, if we were to continue to hear that they had, quote, completed all these 5 pledges in, shall we say, very dubious ways. Like we've said with the inflation, Rishi Sunak did nothing to reduce inflation at all. He passed no laws. He did nothing. He just crossed his fingers and hoped that inflation would come down. And even though inflation has sort of come down, it is still pretty high. But what did Rishi Sunak do to achieve that? Absolutely nothing. But back to the asylum. We have heard today that there are now Home Office insiders who have come out and accused ministers of deploying smoke and mirror tactics to try and obscure this whole thing, that they have lied about it, that the numbers aren't as real as they claim to be, with, of course, probably we will see Certainly today, Starmer and Sunak clash over this. At PMQs today, that is almost certain. Will we ever get to see the real numbers? I highly doubt it. Highly doubt it. Because you've had civil servants come out and accuse the government of gaslighting voters by making an assertion that this was the case, when, according to these insiders, there are still more than 4,000 outstanding cases. So, how they've done this, how they've achieved this way, when many of these, how you judge these systems are really complex ways to try and judge them. And it's not, difficult. It's really difficult to do, especially when there's no legal guidance or documents or stuff like that these asylum seekers may not have. It's incredibly hard and complex just to, snap your fingers. All of a sudden, this was a problem. Still a month ago in December, this was being brought up by Yvette Cooper, challenging James Cleverly on this when he became it, Suella Braverman when she was still in office, and yet all of a sudden, magic, it's gone, it's disappeared. Yeah, this type of backlog just does not disappear overnight. So these are massively dodgy fingers, massively dodgy figures that have come out over this. I do not think that this is true at all. What has come out about these numbers, I think they are desperately trying to lie on this, just to try and say, "Oh, look, we've completed another pledge. We've completed another pledge, guys." But of course, the biggest worry and the reason why they're going after this is that the Tories are increasingly worried about Reform UK and Nigel Farage. I am now increasingly convinced that the next general election, which is probably going to happen this year, is going to be one of immigration and asylum. And I think that's what the Tories are going to try and make it. But of course, as we've said before, general elections can be weird, wild, and wacky things where you may remember the Theresa May 2017 snap surprise general election. That was meant to be an election all about Brexit. That was meant to be a Brexit general election. It didn't. It turned out to be about pensioners and the heating allowance in general election. That was the major issue of that particular general election. So what will happen in this one? Will it be about asylum and immigration? Something which Labour should not be afraid to tackle and basically say, hey, look, and making positive cases for immigration. Say, hey, look, we need immigration. We have a declining population rate. We have all these extra job vacancies, which, our population cannot fill. They are desperately needed. If we are to grow the economy, you need to accept that there has to be immigration. And that when the Labour government comes in, we are going to properly fund the system so that we can have, a system that actually works, compared to the Tories, who just defunded the system and broke it at every possible opportunity, which resulted in a massive legacy of backlogs, of people stopping, this having to put their lives on hold for years to try and find out what was happening with their claim. And at the end of the day, as we said before, this is just not an issue. It really, really is not. Especially when you've got the cost of living crisis, you've got the energy crisis, you've got the NHS. There are a ton more issues that are far, far more important to voters on this. And I think that if the Tories are, like I say, we'll have to wait and see, of course, because, like I say, general elections can be strange beasts when they appear. So you don't know if it is really going to be an asylum and immigration focused general election. but we'll have to see. I don't think it is. I think the fact that you've got people, and time again, we've seen focus groups say this, that immigration really not an issue to them, even before this, and this is primarily because you've had people like Nigel Farage riling up people saying, "Oh no, immigration, massive problem, massive issue," when it's really not. But there you go. So, like I say, we'll see what happens, but yeah, expect probably more stories, maybe even later in the week, or probably even next week, to get the real numbers and to find out, yes, this is all complete smoke and mirrors to hide the fact that they have once again failed to offer this. And shockingly, Nigel Farage comes out and says, the real reason why the government have failed on this is because they've given people too many asylum. They've given asylum to too many people. And you know, it's just so bizarre. So, what should be like the perfect asylum number, Nigel? And of course, as we've said before, if Nigel Farage ever found himself as like in charge of the Home Office or, God forbid, Prime Minister, he would be failing on this as well. He hasn't got any answers to this question. The idea that he can just stop this and just put a cap on it, no, that doesn't solve the problem. But then again, that's a completely different conversation to have, I suppose. But again, another video for another time. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.